Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. I'm here to review a Hulu movie that I watched today called Patrice the movie. Basically, it's about a couple, Gary and Patrice, Patrice Jitter, living in Hamilton Township, New Jersey. Both individuals and their struggles with trying to get married. Both individuals, at least what's going on, both individuals are disabled with cerebral palsy. Uh, Patrice, she walks with a cane and she wears AFO orthotics. And Gary, her love interest slash future husband, is wheelchair bound, and they live about 20 minutes from each other. And this basically it chronicles more of Patrice's story, but it mentions a little bit about Gary um, as well. It starts off with, like I said, Patrice and Gary. They're talking. She's ironing his clothes and helping him get dressed, and they're talking about their routine because they are both Special Olympians. They participate in um, the Special Olympics. They say the Special Olympics, but that really confused me because I think they meant the Paralympics because the Special Olympics I would think is more for individuals with uh, mental disabilities like Down syndrome, for example. But they say the Special Olympics, so whatever, some type of athletics, some type of games for the physically challenged, and they're going over their routine because they plan to do a figure skating. Pardon me. They plan to do a figure skating routine. So as Patrice is ironing, she's telling Gary what she wants to do, and he's saying she'll be great at that. And then we see Patrice helping Gary into the bed, and we see a really loving moment of true intimacy between the two. So they go and they do the performance, and they knock it out the park, and then they explain, that uh, he Gary proposed. He proposed to her, and then the bomb was, as he says, the bomb was dropped on them that if they were to get officially married, they would be at risk of losing their benefits, both their income that they receive, the SSI that they receive, and the medical benefits that they both receive. And it shows them going to the office and the woman telling them, uh, about this specific law uh, that exists regarding marriage. Um, and they're both just devastated because they really love each other and they want to get married. They live about 20 minutes uh, from each other, but 20 minutes is a lot, for them. And they talk about what Patricia's life is like on a day-to-day basis. She works as a crossing guard, and she said that uh, the reason why she chose that specific career as a crossing guard was because when she was younger and they go through it, um, a lot of the kids her age and kids older than her picked on her, but she had, because of her disability, but she had friends uh, that were younger. So she always had the desire to want to help younger, younger kids. She also has a passion for drawing, and she said one of the reasons why she was making this particular documentary, other than to repeal this unfair law regarding marriage, was that she could document her story because she's already in her 50s, and she said if if Nobody tell if her story's not told now, it'll never be told. So, and she loves drawing, and she could be seen. She drew this amazing artwork of her and Gary, um, you know, together. And then, they go into their day-to-day activities. What they do and how they're planning stuff. And she has this friend Elizabeth, two friends, Elizabeth and another girl, right? That's both they have autism. So the girl Elizabeth, that's her real close friend. We learn about her life, what it's like with autism, specifically when they have to do certain tasks. Because Gary and Patrice decide to do they can't do a marriage because, of course, they learn about this act that even if they were to live together, guys, even just living together would put their benefits at risk. So this movie is entertaining but also educational in a sense for individuals with disabilities that want to get married because what it's telling you is if both parties like Gary and Patrice they both have disabilities. If they were to get married, and not just get married, but living together, even cohabitating together, they could be at risk of both individuals could be at risk of losing their benefits, and they really need their benefits because like most disabled people, live on the margins, the economic margins of society, right? So, seeing as though they live on the margins of society, they need, economic margins of society. They need um, their checks, basically. And there are times in the film that they go through where, like, for example, Gary checks his account in one scene, and he only has like $58 in his account, and they show them going shopping, and they can't afford certain amenities that they need. Now, as they're planning their commitment ceremony, it's really sweet. He's shopping for pants. She's shopping for her dress. They're really getting ready, and they're really doing this as far as the commitment ceremony goes. They only live like 20 minutes away from each other, so they could work it out that way. But one of the saddest lines in the movie, he goes, he says, how sad it's going to be when we finally do have this commitment ceremony, and I'm not able to wake up every morning to the woman that I love, right? And it's so sad, when you hear something like that, especially from someone like me that is disabled myself. And if I'd have gone through with the marriage that I wanted to go through, with someone in the 2010s, that quite possibly would have happened to me as well. You know what I mean? So, I mean, in New York, it's a little bit different. Laws vary from state to state, but uh, this marriage deterrent law is pretty much nationwide, and it's worse in some other states. So, and they go into like specifics as far as economics too. Like they mentioned that people with disabilities, people on well, let me just stop saying people with disabilities, people on SSI, right? Because there are some individuals with disabilities that they are independently self-sufficient. They work, fantastic jobs, you know, I, and they don't depend on SSI and they don't depend on government assistance. But this is specifically for people that do depend on SSI and do depend on government assistance, especially Medicaid and the monthly supplement income. You can't have assets that exceed over $2,000 in your bank account. If you go over $1 over, the government will consider that you're no longer eligible for Social Security benefits. David Roscoe, what's up, man? How are you? Uh, Welcome. So this is how it is in their state in New Jersey, and it's also like I looked it up too. It's like this in my state of New York as well. So they go into a little bit of Patrice's life. She's she has several siblings. She has like 4 or 5 siblings, and she's the last child, right? And her mother was pretty old when she had her. Her mother was a nurse at the Willowbrook Institute, right, where they would back in the 50s and 60s they would you know this was before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990 and expanded upon in 1992. Way back in the day, they would house disabled individuals, and Patrice was born in the 1970s, in the early 1970s. Uh, they would house individuals with disabilities uh, in homes, in these institutions. So her mom was working at places like this, and she always was scared that Patrice would end up in a place like this. So when Patrice goes to kindergarten, she tells Patrice, hide that you have a disability, because Patrice has a rather mild form of cerebral palsy. She's able to get around. You can't really tell that she has cerebral palsy. She's able to help Gary to the best of her ability, like help him get dressed, help him get into the bed, for example, feed him. Um, Not feed him, he feeds himself, but I mean, like, prepare his meals and everything. I mean, she has a more mild form of it than he does. So she tells her to hide her disability from, um, you know, the other kids in kindergarten. But the other kids aren't fooled. I mean, they know that she has a disability, and they throw things at her. They light paper on fire. They throw it at her. Now, the way these scenes are reenacted is really cool because I don't know what the budget was for this movie, but it wasn't a big budget movie. And in order to show memories and flashbacks, a lot of it consisted of memories and flashbacks. In order to show that, they would have these little kids, these cast of little kids portraying the people that Patrice was talking about. Like, for example, her mother, right, was played by um, this one little girl. I'm trying to look her up on IMDb right now, but whatever, it's not important. But by this one little girl, and all the scenes in her life are portrayed by a specific, other little child. So, like, they're showing it in live action, like it's a play, for example. And she's sitting on the toilet, in the bathroom trying to hide. They're calling her the R word, really cruel stuff. And she basically has no friends. And it's not until she starts to she starts to become really angry and she gets in trouble for fighting, and they take her away and they send her to a juvenile detention center where her stuff is stolen and she's picked on and everything. And her mom realizes the error of her ways, because her mom tried to keep her in line by spanking her all the time, but this just made her more upset, right? And she doesn't really have a lot of friends until she goes to, special ed, and then she finally meets this friend. It's funny because this friend is a friend in a wheelchair, and the friend, flatulates, he farts, and Patrice finds it funny, and this is how they become close friends. So, and this is like in the mid 70s. So by 1985, Patrice is already uh, an adult. You know what I mean? Like she's already 21 years old uh, by now. And she goes to a club, and the music's playing and everything. She's happy to be out in the club. Keep in mind she's 21, and over the loudspeaker, the mother says, Patrice Jeter, you should go home." And like the level of embarrassment that Patrice faces when this happens. I mean, any kid, regardless, disabled, not disabled, would face embarrassment. But the thing is that the mother was old and she was concerned for her. She wanted to actually keep her home. And it's later in a later scene, because it jumps around a lot between the future and the past, flashbacks, basically telling the story through these series of flashbacks. So later, like when it's her mother's 100th heavenly birthday, and she has strawberry shortcake, her, Gary, and this other wheelchair bound friend, Michael, that is like her best friend as a kid, right? Um, they're all sitting around the table eating, and she's saying that Gary is saying he wished he could have met her mother because he and Patrice, they met when the mother was already passed away, and she's saying, well, if you did meet her, my mom would probably say that uh, you were a bad influence on me and try to chase you away. And then Gary figures out, well, her mom was probably only saying that because she always wanted her around. I think a lot of um, families that have a person with a disability in their family, think that, but believe that. I mean, they believe that, they should always keep the kid around because, they use them as a friend. They use them as like, they coddle them, they overprotect them, and they don't want them to leave the nest. They really don't want them to get married, you know? So that's basically what Patrice's mom was doing. But the irony is, when she commits when she does this, when she's 21, the mother says she's had enough of her, and she calls the cops, and they lock Patrice in the institution. So the mother was working so arduously, basically, to keep Patrice out of the institution. But ironically, the mother is the one who put her in the institution. And she talks about how she underwent physical physical abuse in the institution. She underwent sexual abuse in the institution. It was terrible. Electrical shock therapy. This was like the 80s, and they were still doing this to individuals. And it just changed her. And she held on a grudge. She held on animosity towards her mother until her mother passed away. So, and then Gary goes into, yeah, Willowbrook. Yeah, yes, Lise, Willowbrook. I don't know where that is. Let me look it up. Pardon me, guys. I'm looking it up. Yes, Lisa, it still exists. It's a hospital for children with intellectual disabilities. So yes, it exists, Lisa. Still, Willowbrook State Hospital. So there's a scene where he comes home from his house with Patrice, and he's alone by himself. Gary, and he talks a little bit about his life and his perspective. They show him, doing independent things, making hamburgers for himself, watching TV. He has a nice home. It's surrounded by New York Giants paraphernalia. Obviously, he's a New York Giants fan. He's also a Mariah Carey fan. There's pictures of Mariah Carey all over the house, his house. You know what I mean? So, and he talks about his life and how his parents, they kind of did the same thing. They kept him in the house a lot. He was entertained by TV, video games, because his dad was very embarrassed about him. His dad was an EMT, right? But he talked about, like, in the beginning, he talked about when um, when his family would go out in public places. Sometimes he would, you know, us with CP, our motor skills aren't so good. So we would sometimes eat and we make a mess sometimes, right? So he's eating with Patrice and food drops on the floor. And he reminisces about when he was, he used to be out with his dad when he was a kid. And he would do that. And the dad would just be totally embarrassed about it. The dad was totally embarrassed of him. And he also, he talks about, his sister that passed away, his parents. But one thing he says, that his parents also never got to meet Patrice, but he says that he doesn't think that his dad and his mom would have liked Patrice anyway, because he loved his father and he loved his mother. But at the same time, his father and his mother were racist, and Patrice is a black woman, obviously, and they wouldn't have liked their son because the mother used to tell him, listen, don't ever bring home a black child. If you bring home a black child, I'll disown you. And he didn't until after they passed, the parents passed away. You know what I mean? But the irony is that his dad was an EMT and he was in one of Public Enemy's videos, 911 is a joke, that Public Enemy made. He was the only white guy in that video. So he was in a famous rap video, yet he was racist. You know what I mean? Like, funny, but, he says he doesn't care. He loves Patrice anyway, that Patrice was the best thing that ever happened to him. And later they go into why. So Patrice is in the hospital. Yeah, at least in Willowbrook they put her in. She's in Willowbrook, and they're doing this stuff to her. Eventually, her mom allows her to come home, and she gets her own place, and she's living her own life independently. And but she's still having money issues. She's still having budgeting issues because it's hard to really make it as a person with a disability in New Jersey. So where the taxes are higher than they are, the property taxes are higher than they are in other states. So she's still asking her mom for money. She's asking her mom for help. And the mom is saying, listen, I can barely make it myself. You chose to move out. You chose to live on your own. You have to make it on your own. So again, her mom and her relationship becomes strange. So flash forward to the present, while they're planning their commitment ceremony, their accessible van that they have to go around breaks. Right? It took. She bought the van 3 years ago, and it took her up until 6 months before the filming of this to actually finish the payments off for the van, and the van breaks. She takes it to the mechanic guy. The mechanic guy tells her, listen, there's nothing you can do with this. So they go to an expo, and we find out that the fixing of the van. I mean the purchasing of a new van because they said it's not salvageable. The van will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, which obviously they do not have. I mean, the planning of the ceremony was putting a strain on them to begin with economically. I mean, poor Gary, he had on like $58 in his bank account. What can he do to help? What can Patrice do to help? Nobody can help them. So they come up with various ideas. One of them is to collect cans. Like they start releasing videos to tell their friends and family to do the can. Give them cans. But they cash in all the cans that they have, and like they have hundreds and hundreds of cans, and they only have like $25 or whatever. It's not nearly enough. But that's when the issue with the girl with autism comes in. The girl with autism, she has this ache about touching cans, even though the liquid has been emptied. She feels icky about emptying, touching these empty cans, and that's one of her triggers because that's the thing with autism is they have a lot of triggers, right? So she goes off, and then there's another scene too where they're playing the commitment ceremony and they're doing the music, and she goes off and she starts running and screaming, and she can't take it. So she's obviously having a lot of triggers, but with the can thing, it's a trigger for her. So the cans is out the window. Um, so they have no really other options. And one of the things that this their friend Michael brings up is, well, why don't you try GoFundMe? Now, but the problem with the GoFundMe is that they would have to take it out right away or put it on somebody else's bank account because, again, can't have over $2,000. They count that towards the diminishment of your assets as well. So, and the guy Michael says, what he says is true. We barely get $1,000 as far as our income, and they want us to buy these accessible vans that cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And one of the things about New Jersey, and Lisa can attest to this, because somebody asked her, why doesn't she use the paratransit we have in New York? I don't know about you guys, like David and stuff in other states, but like in New York, we have something called Accessoride. Now, they have the same thing in New Jersey, but Lisa told me this when Lisa lived in New Jersey in the early 2010s, that depending on how far it's not a flat, like in New York, it's a flat rate, like 145 if you have fare, and like 290 if you have, just regular. But in New Jersey, it depends on the miles that you go. So if she's going very far for work, it will cost her an arm and a leg just to get to work, because that's the way Jersey works, right? You know what I mean? So she can't rely on that. She really needs this van, to get around. So they decide that they're going to do the GoFundMe and the fundraising, the Kickstarter. So they do it, and they don't know what else to come up with. They're coming up with a penny raffle, like these little schemes that they could come up with to try to raise this amount of money, even though they know it's impossible. And I just feel really bad from Gary. Sorry, David, I saw you in the chat. From Gary's point of view, that like us as men, and we see the women that we love hurting, whether it be financially, whether it be physically, whatever, we want to help them, but he himself can't do anything. So there are scenes where like you can see him basically agonizing, trying to help the woman that he loves, cheer up, but he try to comfort her or whatever the best way that he can, but he really can't do anything himself. Nobody can. Nobody has the funds to do anything like this. So they posted on GoFundMe, and they do raise the money eventually. And the scene where they finally raise the money is really emotional because he hugs her and he says he got her. So a really manly thing to do, I say. As far as like um, sticking by her side and giving her ideas, basically trying to be her moral support in this time of great tragedy, because he benefits from it too. Because obviously she takes him around. That's why she mainly needs the accessible van. She can walk, so she doesn't really need a wheelchair van. See, that's one of the things that confused me, and I said this to my mom. I'm like, well, if she can't afford a wheelchair van because it's too expensive, why does she just take a regular van, a regular car or van, right, or truck or whatever vehicle, and drive that to work, and then he could meet her wherever. But then I forgot that accessorized paratransit is not like that in New Jersey like it is in New York. So if they want to go out on dates or whatever, they want to go out to eat, they can't, because he had to pay an arm and a leg too to get to where they're meeting at. So it's not just for work; it's for other purposes too. But um, you know, you can't really get around without a car in a place like New Jersey that is very suburban. You know what I mean? It doesn't have the the amenities that New York City has. The people like me that live in New York City take for granted. Well, she, you know, why doesn't he just meet her, take Accessoride to meet her places, or go on the bus to meet her places? It's not going to happen. It's not possible. So they have to travel together. You know what I'm saying? So I forgot that. I'm like, well, she could just buy a regular car. She could get in and drive. You know what I mean? She doesn't need to drive him around, but she wants to be around him. So in order for that to happen, they would need some mode of transportation as well, that they could both get into. So eventually they get uh, the, the wheelchair accessible van. It's a really emotional scene. She puts him in it, she straps him in, and they start driving it. You know what I mean? Finally, after months and months of worrying about how they're going to do it, because she was worried, because one of the things she said, she never wants to lose her place that she has, because she was in that institution and she went through hell in that institution. She talked about their meeting with their lawyer, right? This woman Aisha, right? Meeting with the lawyer, and the lawyer is African American as well. And she talked about when she was in that institution, they wouldn't even have combs that were suitable for African American hair texture. They would have fine tooth combs, which are very difficult for African American textured hair. And that's even a little thing like that adds to her being ostracized, by other people there. So they get the wheelchair accessible van, but still they're having to fight this legal battle with this marriage act. I'm looking up what pardon me guys, I'm looking up what the marriage act is called. It's called uh, the um, the Turn of Marriage Act. So they go to Washington D.C. with these other couples, millions of other couples march on Washington D.C. Squirmy and Grubbs, the famous YouTube couple, which I don't think it really applies to them, because uh, Grubbs, the girl Hannah, is not disabled, but Squirmy is. But I think they since they have such high visibility, they want to do it also. You know what I mean? Cole and Charisma, another disabled couple, they're shown in the movie. They're out there as well. A lot of disabled couples out there to protest this. So eventually, um, you know, it's still in litigation as far as when they can legally do it, but they do have their commitment ceremony. They dance to the song that they dance to in the opening scene. The funny part, they want to dance to this song uh, by Anne Marie, "One Last Dance," and he's telling Alexa put the song on, and putting on, not understanding what he's saying, right? But this is their special song, and they dance to this song, and they have their commitment ceremony at the end, and it talks too about how her mother passing away, and she said when her mother passed away, all the animosity they had, all the heart hurt they had for each other, just disappeared because her mother was no longer with us. And it was a really touching movie and moment, and it really opened my eyes a lot to what individuals with disabilities have to go through, and that marriage, like in this movie, a lot of people wear LGBTQ, uh, clothing, and you think, marriage equality ended in 2014 with Oberfeld versus Hodges, but apparently it didn't. My friend Pito, my best friend Pito, he was unaware of this. I was unaware of it, and I almost got married um, in the 2010s, was engaged, planning my wedding and everything, and I was not aware of it, of any of this stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I was married initially at first too, and I was still not aware of this. So it just sucks that the way they look at people with disabilities is that we cannot ever achieve anything in life. You know what I mean? We're not allowed to work because we're not allowed to work and keep our benefits. We're not allowed we're not allowed to live life. We're not allowed to have a normal life, to want those things, to desire those things. There was a movie years ago with Kirstie Alley, and her husband had intellectual disabilities, and it was based on a true story. And they uh, they took the child away. So we're not allowed to get married. We're not allowed to have children. We're not allowed to live. We're not allowed to work. We're not allowed to do any of this stuff by the constraints of the society. And we supposedly live in a free and prosperous society, a free and prosperous America. So they had a beautiful moment. They didn't have a ceremony, but the fight is still fighting. We still have to repeal this, and we still have to fight for true marriage equality in this country. So kudos to this movie. It's a beautiful movie. I recommend it to everyone. It's really short, not that long. It's like an hour or so, but it really touched me, and it really opened my eyes, to what I possibly could have been facing had I gone all the way through with it in 2012. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Listen, that's what they're fighting for. But the term for Marriage Act is what they're fighting against. You know. Okay, Lisa, thank you. This says the Marriage Equality for Disabled Adults Act. So yeah, we got to fight for this, man. It didn't end with the ADA, man. It doesn't end with that. We're still fighting the fight. We're still fighting. Um, we're fighting social stigmas, and this is good for channels like Living Beyond Limits, and other channels that deal, you know, with people in differently abled relationships and disabled relationships as well to talk about. Because as you can see, I have a wheelchair in the back. I don't usually do videos on disability issues, but this one was important to me because this one really pissed me off when I found this out. And I went to a disabled school with individuals with disabilities, and they never educated us on this. They never talked to us about this. And this is very important. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like this is crucial, guys. Um, but yeah, thank you, Lisa, for contributing, and thank you for the help. And David, thank you for the help as well. Thank you for the big ups, and continue to support the channel and continue to fight this fight against, marriage inequality because it didn't end with Oprah versus Hodge. It's not. Yeah, Lisa's correct. You said you would think the ADA would have mentioned something about it. Yeah, but they didn't because I mean, let's give him credit where credit is due. It was passed by George H.W. Bush. He was yeah. Lisa told me about the movie. That's right. Um, she also told me about the law. I didn't know about it either. I had no idea about it. And like I said, I was almost married. You know what I mean? We would have been up for a rude awakening. She and I, had this happen and we not known about it because virtually nobody, disabled or not disabled, is educated about this or knows about this little inkling. But like I was saying, George H.W. Bush was Republican, so maybe his narrow viewpoint of marriage included one man, one woman for the benefit of procreation, but they had to be able-bodied, right? So Republicans are sticklers for shit like this. You know what I mean? If they feel like, and plus they want to cut our benefits anyway. Republicans are they're conservatives. They're fiscal conservatives. I'm not bad mouthing them. They are fiscal conservatives. That's one of besides social conservatism, that's one of the founding principles of the Republican Party is that they love to cut costs and government spending as much as they can. The whole guns and butter theory, they rather spend it on guns than butter. So they want to cut our benefits anyway. So why would they include provisions in the ADA stating that we have the right to get married and keep our benefits when they want to cut our benefits to begin with? You know what I mean? So yeah. Thank you, Lisa, for telling me about this film. And I really enjoyed it and I recommend it for everyone. And everyone that's disabled or has family members that um are disabled and want to get married and in relationships with other people with disabilities, please tell them to watch this movie and please educate them on what their futures will be ahead because education is key. As NBC used to say, knowing is half the battle. As I always say, knowledge is the cornerstone of everything. So please do your research before you decide to get married if you're a disabled person. And you can always have a commitment ceremony like they did if it's not passed. But we should be allowed, just like LGBTQ people and other people, to express our love and to finally uh, declare our love to in front of our friends and family that we love each other. Because and a part of us can't even live together. That's some real bullshit. I mean, that never even was applicable for people, that were LGBTQ ever. Like that's some real bullshit. And obviously it boils down to money. And they figure, oh, well, they have too much money or whatever. Bullshit. Because even if you combine both incomes, it's not going to cover the cost of living in most states, especially after inflation. Anyway, I love you guys. Peace. Give a fuck.